California, Oregon, and Washington State have voted to strike on Monday if no new contract is reached this weekend, with workers in Hawaii set to walk out later in the week. The key issue in contention, wages. The unions want 4% a year. Kaiser is offering 2% with a bonus and proposing lower starting pay for new hires in order to cut costs, they say, for patients. Workers' response?
They want us to stay affordable, and I understand that. I don't want our patients to have premiums that they can't afford. But in this conversation in particular, their method of staying affordable is only by cutting wages for healthcare workers. It's not cutting wages for managers. It's not cutting wages for CEOs. The onus of responsibility for staying affordable is on the healthcare workers' backs.
Kaiser says it has contingencies in place in the event of a strike. Stakes are high, with COVID still weighing on operations. Talks are continuing and expected to go on 24/7, Becky.
You know, Bertha, this is particularly harrowing because of the healthcare workers who have been on the front lines through all of this, who have been stretched so thin. And you could say the same for the industrial workers. You saw the same story coming from film and television workers with their union threatening to strike earlier this year. We've heard it with Kellogg's. Again, these are frontline workers, especially in the case of the healthcare workers who have laid so much on the line through all of this. It's a pretty tricky dance to be saying they're not going to pay them.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting dynamic in a very tight job market. A lot of the things that these workers are talking about often, too, certainly in healthcare, is the fact that staffing has been minimal. They need more help, and they make the argument that without it, patients' lives are endangered and patient care suffers. So at a time when a lot of industries are starting to pay up, it's interesting to see these guys really trying to hold down costs.
You know, Gemma, this raises another question. Mike and Scott, I'll throw this out to you guys, just what this means in terms of margins. We talked about this a little bit earlier when we were discussing the Kellogg strike that's happening there. Is there a point where margins really start to get compressed a lot more? What do you think, Mike?
Well, there is a point, and actually I think you've already seen the market kind of go toward those companies that have a little bit less kind of reliance on rock bottom wages. And so if you see those companies that basically have the flexibility in their margins to pay more, or they're already paying more, that has been the place that has outperformed for a while. I also think that when we're talking about most companies saying that their biggest problem is finding people, you know, it's almost like if you could just lock folks into a contract, you actually know what your costs are for several years down the road, the market probably can deal with that for a while.
I'm wondering if this whole thing is like a moment in time issue or a more permanent shift where, I mean, clearly workers think that they have more power than they've ever had, arguably, before coming out of the pandemic. Is it a moment in time issue, Becky? Is it a longer lasting shift where the relationship between the worker and the company is fundamentally changed forever? Those are legit questions I think we need to think about.
I wouldn't say forever, but I also wouldn't say that this is transitory, the way the Fed has been talking about, you know, inflation potentially being transitory.